Have you ever heard of a capital city designed to accommodate millions of people, yet it stands eerily empty? Or how about a megaproject in the United States that squandered a staggering $17 billion and never saw the light of day? Today, we embark on a journey to uncover 5 of the most bewilderingly useless megaprojects across the globe. 5. Interstate H3, USA, Hawaii. Let's dive into the story of a spectacular 26-kilometer highway in Hawaii, known as Interstate H3. This highway winds through some of the world's most breathtaking scenery, making it a sight to behold. The natural beauty was so mesmerizing that there were concerns about drivers stopping to admire it, causing traffic jams. However, as captivating as this highway is, it has a controversial past. It was initially proposed back in 1960 with defense purposes in mind. The idea was to connect the Pearl Harbor Naval Base in the south to the Marine Corps Air Station on the East Coast. But the announcement of its construction faced immediate resistance from environmental groups and native Hawaiians who were worried about the extensive urbanization it would bring. Environmental laws at the time, along with a change in the planned route to protect the surrounding valleys, led to indefinite delays. It wasn't until 26 years later that the hurdles were cleared, when Congress exempted the project from environmental laws, finally allowing construction to begin in 1989. Astonishingly, the highway was only completed and opened to the public in 1997, nearly 37 years after it was first proposed. Interstate H3 is often hailed as an engineering marvel due to the challenging terrain it traverses and the advanced construction technologies employed. The highway primarily runs on elevated viaducts to preserve the fragile environment in the valleys below. However, these decades of delays, route changes, and the use of newer but more expensive technologies meant that the project ended up costing 5 times the original estimated budget. The total construction cost was a staggering $1.3 billion, roughly equivalent to $50 million per kilometer, making it the most expensive highway per kilometer in the world. Despite its grandeur and cost, many critics label Interstate H3 as a road to nowhere. The defense reasons that spurred its creation in the 1960s are no longer relevant, and the highway lacks a direct connection to downtown Honolulu. Furthermore, for native Hawaiians, the highway is a painful reminder of cultural loss. Many refuse to use it, considering it cursed because numerous culturally significant sites were destroyed during its construction. In the world of megaprojects, Interstate H3 is undoubtedly an achievement, but for some native communities, it remains a symbol of what they deem as uselessness. Thankfully, it's not completely abandoned, unlike the next project on our list. 4. Ciudad Real Central Airport, Spain. Picture this: Spain, a top-notch European travel destination. That's what sparked the idea for the Ciudad Real Central Airport. It was meant to be a hotspot for holidaymakers within Spain and visitors from abroad. The grand plan was to ease the strain on Madrid's bustling airport, which was bursting at the seams. This new airport boasted one of the longest runways in Europe and could accommodate 2 million travelers annually. That might sound decent, but compared to Madrid's capacity of 70 million passengers, it's a drop in the bucket. They had ambitious plans, though, to ramp it up to serving 10 million travelers each year. So when it finally took off in 2009, the $1.3 billion price tag seemed somewhat justified, but alas, trouble was lurking just around the corner. In 2012, the company responsible for the project went bankrupt, and the dream began to crumble. The first snag was the airport's location. Despite the name, it wasn't central at all. It sat a daunting 200 kilometers away from Madrid. Most travelers weren't thrilled about making such a long trek to reach it. Big airlines weren't too keen on setting up shop there either. They preferred the capital. Within just a year of opening, the shiny new airport was left with only one small airline serving it. With no major carriers to draw in passengers, the airport found itself drowning in a staggering $350 million debt by 2012. It was no surprise when it went belly up and was put on the auction block in 2013. In 2014, the airport even made an appearance on the popular British TV show Top Gear, highlighting its desolate status. After several failed attempts at auctions, including a laughable $12,000 offer, new owners finally stepped in and took over in 2019. Then came the COVID-19 pandemic, which sent the aviation industry into a tailspin. But surprisingly, Ciudad Real Airport found a new lease on life. With passengers nowhere in sight, the new owners repurposed the airport as a haven for grounded planes. Its dry climate, lengthy runway, and ample space made it an ideal spot. By August 2020, a total of 65 airplanes were parked at the airport, and plans were underway to create storage for over 300 aircraft. This fresh approach provided the airport with a much-needed lifeline. However, once the pandemic is under control and normal flights resume, all those stored planes will take off, leaving this billion-dollar megaproject effectively useless to travelers worldwide. 3. Naypyidaw, Myanmar. Now, let's delve into another megaproject that even made its way onto the famous show Top Gear. But this one's quite unique. It's not just an ordinary airport, it's an entire capital city, freshly built from the ground up in Myanmar. The story begins in 2002, when Myanmar's former military leadership decided to secretly construct a brand new capital city. Now, shifting a country's capital isn't uncommon. Countries like Brazil, Egypt, and Pakistan have done it before. But this was done in absolute secrecy. It wasn't until November 2005 that Myanmar's leaders announced this grand move to the public. Interestingly, they kept the name of the new capital under wraps for 4 more months. Finally, in March 2006, they unveiled it as Naypyidaw, which translates to the king's residence. The reasons behind this sudden capital relocation were shrouded in mystery. Some speculated that the military leaders were worried about a potential naval attack, while others believed it was based on astrological advice. But a big part of it had to do with the former capital, Yangon. Yangon was bursting at the seams with its 7 million residents and was struggling to keep up with its infrastructure. It was projected that its population would double by 2050. Moreover, Yangon had originally been established as the capital during British rule for the convenience of the British Navy. So, it made sense for Myanmar to shift its capital to a more central location. The construction of Naypyidaw was swift, with successive governments pouring a whopping $4 billion into the city to date. On the surface, it seemed to have everything needed to attract visitors. A massive 20-lane highway, over 100 luxurious hotels divided into 3 hotel districts, golf courses, museums, and even a 99-meter-tall replica of a landmark originally found in Yangon. But there was a crucial element missing: people. Naypyidaw was home to fewer than 1 million residents, most of whom lived in the suburbs that existed before the city became the capital. But why were people so reluctant to move there? One major reason was the lack of adequate healthcare facilities, quality educational institutions, and economic opportunities. As a result, most of the population preferred not to make the city their permanent home. Consequently, Naypyidaw often gave the eerie impression of a ghost town. The enormous 20-lane highway remained virtually empty, with no traffic congestion to speak of. Sometimes you'd only spot a single car cruising along this vast road. The city did have an airport capable of handling 3.5 million passengers annually, but on a busy day, only a dozen people might use it. The shopping malls mainly attracted diplomatic staff on weekends, while hotel lobbies were typically deserted. Despite its apparent desolation, there's a glimmer of hope for this royal capital. It was designed as a city for the future, and with the country's population steadily increasing, Naypyidaw may still have a chance at redemption. For now, it's arguably the world's most peculiar capital city and remains largely unused by much of the country's population. 2. Forest City, Malaysia. Now let's turn our attention to an ambitious project called Forest City, a futuristic smart city destined to emerge from reclaimed land on 4 artificial islands. What makes this city intriguing to investors is its proximity to the bustling city-state of Singapore, known for its world-renowned port and thriving economy. To bridge the gap between Forest City and Singapore, developers have already constructed a second link bridge, making the journey between these 2 cities a mere 20-minute drive. Forest City also boasts its own customs facility, allowing residents to travel freely between the new city and Singapore. The city's design is centered around sustainability and green innovations. Imagine buildings adorned with lush green rooftops and vertical gardens, creating a genuine jungle-like atmosphere. The streets within Forest City will be multi-layered, with the lower levels serving as traffic and parking spaces, while the upper levels will feature parks, sports facilities, and transportation hubs. What's more, the entire city is committed to using renewable energy sources and is set to be completed by 2035, with a hefty price tag of $100 billion. One of the 4 planned islands is well on its way to completion, featuring 50 apartment buildings, golf courses, swimming pools, and even beaches. However, this grand project hasn't had a smooth journey. Numerous economic and political challenges have already cropped up, causing roadblocks in its progress. Much of the funding comes from China, and initially, Chinese residents had significant access to Forest City during its early construction years. This led to an influx of wealthy Chinese investors seeking refuge from soaring property prices in their home country. In fact, by 2019, a staggering 80% of property owners were Chinese, and even street signs in schools started featuring Mandarin prominently. This massive wave of Chinese investment sparked controversy, with critics labeling it a form of neo-colonialism. In response to these concerns, Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad took the helm and put a stop to foreigners owning property in Forest City. Many foreigners left, and new investors were deterred. Then came the COVID-19 pandemic and worldwide travel restrictions, compounded by Malaysia's strict movement control orders, which halted new investments. Many existing investors withdrew due to the uncertainty surrounding the project. By early 2020, fewer than 500 people were residing in the residential developments, a far cry from the envisioned 700,000. The project has since been in a state of flux, with reports indicating that only a handful of homes have been sold at Forest City since the pandemic's onset. Additionally, Country Garden, the developer, laid off over 1,000 Malaysian workers, a stark sign of the project's declining fortunes. In hindsight, Forest City may have been overly ambitious from the start, its futuristic vision proving difficult to realize, and political challenges further complicating its prospects. Despite the billions invested, Forest City currently stands as a megaproject with little utility. 1. Yucca Mountain Nuclear Waste Repository. To wrap up our list, we have a megaproject rooted in a critical global concern: nuclear waste. Although it's not often in the spotlight, mishandling nuclear waste can be more catastrophic than many other environmental issues we hear about. Currently, this hazardous waste is stored above ground near the power plants where it's generated. However, the scientific consensus is that the safest long-term solution is to bury it deep underground. So in the 1980s, the United States government embarked on a quest to find a permanent solution. In 1987, Yucca Mountain in Nevada was chosen as the best option. It's close to the USA's most frequently used nuclear testing site and far from any densely populated areas. The plan was to store the waste from across the nation in a tunnel complex about 300 meters below Yucca Mountain. Yucca Mountain had several advantages on paper. Its remote location and composition, formed from volcanic ash millions of years ago, meant it could absorb radioactive waste without deteriorating. But there was a big problem. Nevadans weren't on board. Despite having over 100 operational and decommissioned nuclear reactor sites spread across 34 states, Nevada didn't have any of them. Consequently, Nevada's lawmakers and residents vehemently opposed the notion of becoming the sole nuclear waste dumping ground for the entire country. Moreover, concerns arose about the accuracy of the official hydrological and geological surveys of Yucca Mountain.
At Yucca Mountain, the waste would be 1,000 feet above the water table.
Opponents argued that the site could potentially contaminate a nearby water source that flows into Amargosa Valley, crucial for Native American communities with centuries-long ties to the area. Despite fierce opposition, the project secured approval in 2002, and the Department of Energy resumed construction. However, Nevada's resistance only grew stronger. Critics argued that the routine transportation of nuclear waste through the state would stigmatize its residents and harm tourism. For the opposition, Nevada's selection as the repository site seemed driven by its lower population and fewer congressional representatives. By the time Barack Obama assumed office, the project had become deeply politicized. In 2010, the Obama administration halted funding, deeming the project unworkable. 3 years later, a federal court ordered its resumption, but progress has been sluggish. The Biden administration has made it clear that Yucca Mountain is no longer part of the nation's plans. After 4 decades, extensive planning, legal battles, and over $17 billion spent, the Yucca Mountain project has never been put to use and stands as a useless megaproject. So, what are your thoughts on these megaprojects? Do you believe any of them hold a chance of becoming useful in the future? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments below. Thanks for watching the video, and if you found it informative, please like and subscribe to Blueprint Journeys for similar content. We look forward to sharing more knowledge with you in the future. Until then, take care.